Okay. Okay. Hello, everybody. This is Sharonda, and this is my YouTube channel as well as my podcast, Spiritual Sense. Today is September the 15th, which is a Thursday. And so, in this YouTube channel, as well as Sprinkler Studio podcast, I go over topics in regards to the paranormal, occult, and supernatural. So, I speak on things such as hauntings, curses by way of generational curses. I speak on spiritual manifestation, spiritual apathy, spiritual renewal, spiritual manifestation, New Age practices and beliefs such as Wiccan, witchcraft, Scientology, demonology, angels, spirit guides, things of that sort. And so I did a podcast. I went back into my um, archives and I did a podcast in regards to the religion of voodoo as well as the practice of hoodoo. I'm going to do an update on that podcast as well as YouTube episode as well. So voodoo, many of us hear about voodoo and who and I don't think many people know about hoodoo, but you have voodoo and then you have hoodoo. Voodoo, for my previous research, is an actual religion that comes from the motherland, which is Africa. Certain parts of Africa practices voodoo. Then you have voodoo, which is a practice. It's not necessarily a religion, it is a practice. So it may in turn, uh, when you hear people say things such as, uh, someone has roots on them or a burn of herbs and things of that sort. And so in my research, I gained insight and clarity as to what that is and what is being conveyed. Okay, so before I go into what is written, I'm going to tell you what the inclination that came in my spirit as to voodoo versus hoodoo. Okay, number one, um, voodoo is a religion, as I mentioned, that originates out of Africa. And it entails reading of Bible verses, certain scriptures, biblical scriptures, theological scriptures, and things of the sort. And it may entail rituals and things of that sort. Voodoo basically is inclination from the gods about something that you may not have fathomed or even gave much thought about. So that's basically what voodoo is. It's a practice, and in my research, no one can definitively state exactly what it is in terms of the practice or the religion of voodoo. But what I have gained from my research is God giving you discernment or giving you inclination about something that you never really fathomed. And I'll give you an example as to what I'm talking about, such as proper way of if you're someone that perhaps in humble beginnings or on a farm, how to uh, keep and have some type of clean or sterile environment in regards to slaughter of animals if you're raising animals to feed your family. It could be inclination about vegetation and how to construct um, water line systems to water the crops. So they're being under the guidance of a spirit. It's spirits from time ago that would overtake the individual to give them inclination about things that they didn't know or things that they innovative. Like if they have been doing things and conditioned to doing things a certain way, well, in turn, the practice or the religion of voodoo It's the gods coming in and assisting them by way of. So that's what I have gained from my studies and my research on voodoo, the religion of voodoo. Voodoo, which is a practice. So it in turn to let me know what they're doing and who is doing it. So that's basically what it mentioned in my spirit in reference to that. What they are doing and who is doing it. Meaning, it may be a situation where you may have a mystery about if somebody is targeting you in regards to, um, you can't pinpoint who it's coming from. Every time I turn around, this has happened, that has happened, this has happened, that has happened. And when you begin to summon certain spirits, it will make it apparent to you as to where it is coming from. Oftentimes, you'll be very surprised as to who is trying to do you in. And I'm not telling you this to feel paranoid or to feel ashamed, but it could be in terms of, like, say for instance, if there's some crimes that would have been committed within a region or a location or what have you, and you wanted to know, okay, who is keep doing this, who is doing this, and it will become apparent to you as to what direction it's coming from and possibly who is doing it. Because oftentimes, as I mentioned, the biggest trick the devil ever pulled is what? Convincing the world he or she did not exist. You'll be very surprised as to who is demonic and demonically led. And when you ask God for discernment, it's going to present itself as such. It truly is. And oftentimes, when people are in their are in a type of a phase or a type of a mode, this is God giving them discernment about something that's on a bigger scale that they haven't even fathomed about. And so basically, that's the synopsis of that. And so that's basically um what that is. He will uh put things into your space, into your corner, to give you an example or give you enlightenment of what direction it's coming from and as to whom it's coming from. Birds. Just now, cockroach that got in, lizard that got in some months back. Uh, you know, Animals, people. God works to whom he will and who he chooses to convey a message. And just now I just had my tarot card box to pop. So could be because I moved it, but who knows? But if you pay attention to things such as that, he will give you enlightenment about things like, say for instance, if if you go to a restaurant and it may not be up to par in terms of standards in regards to cleanliness and things of the sort. So God will put things in your space to alarm you prior to you going to this restaurant. It works the same way in terms of if you go to someone's house or you go and be around a certain individual or a group of people, whatever the case may be, it will resonate within your being. And so I think in the practice of voodoo, that essentially is what that is. He will also give you inclination when someone is speaking, but the intent behind their words doesn't match. So you will instinctively get it, like somebody just smiling, and the whole while they're saying one thing, and then on the inside, God putting in, this is a demon. I don't care anything about you today, but otherwise, they're saying something totally different. I know it sounds crazy. Trust me, I know, but this is how it works. Okay, so basically, the religion of voodoo is simply that discernment, the ability to understand when someone is speaking in a different dialect or a different language. God will put it within you to where you would know He will put images in your mind's eye to where you would know. You may not necessarily can speak back what they are speaking, but you will begin to understand that. So basically, voodoo is such as that. It's all in how you make it, because in anything given situation or any given thing in life, you could be it could be positive or favorable, or it could be negative or unfavorable. Okay, so that's basically what the synopsis of voodoo is from my research. Am I condoning voodoo? I honestly feel this way. We all have to eat. Like, we like that burger that you get on your table. How did you think it get there? We slaughter a cow for you to eat that burger. So would you consider that to be a favorable thing because you got to eat? Or would you consider that to be unfavorable because of the cow? You catch my drift? So that's a contrast. And God will give you inclination about that, such as that. Getting to back to hoodoo, you would know who to do it to. You would know at what season, you would know at what time, you would know temperature. So it's kind of like, as I mentioned about on my podcast, when I mentioned about spiritual branding. And I said, similar culture shock is a form of spiritual branding. That means, say for instance, if I'm being Black American, and I decided to, go to a foreign land, foreign country, let's say Brazil. They do things this way. And they look at the same thing way I do. Same complexion, probably the same hair texture, but things are what differently. It's a different culture. God had to let me see and understand, in my understanding, that this is of a different breed. This is of a different type. And this is how different spirits happen. We are all spiritual based, whether we want to know it or not. But in my conquest in, wanting to know about dialects and languages and cultures and things of that sort, and how you can go into getting back to the point that I was making in regards to like being in Brazil, you know, and once the eyes have been conditioned to see and open, you will see things in a whole nother sensibility. And somehow things will mesh and you will mesh into that reality or that location. So basically, voodoo, which is a religion, or hoodoo, which is a practice, it would give you inclination in terms of when something is foreign to you, is what I'm getting at. Like when something is not, quote, normal to you, is what that is. And that's basically what that religion is: ability to understand apart from your own understanding. Um, so I am on a website and we're going to go over voodoo. Um, it's a traditional Afro Haitian religion. Voodoo represents a syncretism of the West African Voodoo religion and Roman Catholicism by the descendants of the Dahomey, Congo, and Yoruba, and other ethnic groups who had been enslaved and transported to colonial Saint Dominique, as we know now, Haiti. That's what the name of Haiti was back then, is what it mentions. Partly Christianized by Roman Catholic missionaries in the 16th and 17th century. The word voodoo means spirit or deity in the fun language of the African kingdom of Dahomey, now referred to as Benin. So it says voodoo is a world view encompassing philosophy, medicine, justice, and religion. Its fundamental principle is that everything is spirit. Humans are spirits who inhabit the visible world. The unseen world is populated by Iwa spirits, and mysteries, invisible, the invisibles, and Zanj, angels, and the spirits of ancestors and the recently deceased. All these spirits are believed to live in a mythic land called Guinan, or a cosmic Africa. The God of the Christian Bible is understood to be the creator of both the universe and the spirits. The spirits were made by God to help him govern humanity and the natural world. The primary goal and activity of voodoo is to CVLA, serve the spirits, to offer prayers and perform various devotional rites directed at God and particularly spirits in the return for health, protection, and favor. So basically, you want to pay homage to the gods and goddesses and spirit, but we refer to orishas and deities and things of the sort, but ultimately, it's God. It's God. So basically, it's God giving you inclination by what this deity or this orisha has been assigned to. That's simply what it is. It's a spirit characteristic that has been given a name. Spirit possession plays an important role in Afro-Haitian religion as it does in many other world religions. So it just came in my being that I need to speak and let you know some things are not apparent to certain individuals in certain cultures. And because we're not that communicative and not to offend individuals, this is God's way of giving discernment by way of being possessed by a spirit. It's what it just mentioned to me that I need to tell you, whoever's watching or will be watching. Um, Again, spirit possession plays an important role in the Afro Haitian religion as it does in many other world religions. During religious rites, believers sometimes enter a trance like state in which the devotee may eat and drink, perform stylized dances, give supernaturally inspired advice to people, or perform medical cures or special physical feats. These acts exhibit the incarnate presence of the Ilwa within the entranced devotee. So they are in a it's an altered sense of consciousness. Many people may who eyes haven't been conditioned to see it may think that you are what? On drugs, you're drunk, and all the things of that nature. But you got to understand, typically the individuals that are in these states is because they need to eat or what they're eating. You got to understand and realize that our body is a chemical process and it functions by way of things that it desires in order for us to sustain life. And oftentimes, when they are in these different trances, it may appear as though that they're under the influence, meaning of some substance. But you got to realize and understand that your body is a biological chemical makeup. So if you're not drinking enough water and the certain metabolism and things of the sort happens, then it will appear as though that you are what? Induced or under some type of trance or whatever the case may be. But I do feel as though it's spiritual because, as I mentioned before, by way of the spirit, manifestation comes physically as well as mentally. So you are being guided by way of the spirit, believe it or not. It is to provide you with infinite knowledge, capability, and understanding that you never really even fathomed. Simple as that. Um, so it says voodoo ritual activity by way of prayer, song, dance, and gesture is aimed at refining and restoring balance and energy in relationships between people and between people and the spirits of the unseen world. Voodoo is an oral tradition practiced by extended families that inherit familiar spirits along with the necessary devotional practices from their elders. So, by way of your elders, or your ancestors, familiar spirits will what present themselves back to the forefront. So if someone is questioning about their identity and self-identity and culture and where I come from, God will put the spirit in you to make it apparent as to who I would come from, meaning where my people originate from. And I think when a person has a many different cultures and ethnicity within their lineage, it will bring about confusion because and I think in essence, you know, and I hate to touch step on anybody's toes. Please don't take offense to what I just mentioned because it just prompted me to speak on this. Black on black crime or white on white crime. And when you turn against your own, meaning your own race of people, it's because there was division, divide amongst us because of um, the differences in cultures, the differences in complexion, the differences in social classes, the differences in intelligence. And I think, in essence, it will come to the forefront as to whom you are dealing with. That spirit will present itself. Okay? And that goes in turn when I mentioned about spiritual renewing as well as reincarnation, how energy doesn't die. It re-manifests itself back now. Okay. And you will begin to see that in individuals. We spirit channel. You got some people that spirit channel, and I think we most of us spirit channel, but you got some people that are gifted in it where they spirit conjure. Like spirit channeling is as I mentioned, is when you are empathetically picking up on perhaps someone that you befriended in this time of existence. Spirit conjuring more or less is when it's like years ago, as they refer to an old soul, like you have awakened the soul of someone that lived maybe 1,000 years ago, or 100 years ago, or 500 years ago. What I'm getting at, knock on wood. Okay. Uh, so it says in the city's local hierarchies of priestesses and priests, Manbo and Ongan, the children of the spirits, Ansi, and the ritual drummers, Ontogi, comprise more formal societies or congregations. In these congregations, knowledge is passed on through a ritual of initiation in which the body becomes a site of spiritual transformation. And that's when you in turn will begin to see shape shifting, and because it will reveal itself to you. The countenance is a spiritual countenance, and the spirits will present to you, and that's God giving you inclination about something. um there is some regional difference in ritual practice across Haiti, and branches of the religion include Rada, Dami, Igbo, Nago, Uria, Manding, Hetwo, and Congo. There is no centralized hierarchy, no single leader, and no official spokesperson, but various groups sometimes attempt to create such official structures. There are also secret societies called the Zangi and Sapwell that perform a religious old jurisdiction function. The calendar of ritual feasts, synchronized with the Roman Catholic calendar, provides the yearly rhythm of religious practice. Important Ilwa are celebrated on Saints' Day. Okay, and it says, for example, Ogu on St. James Day, July 25th, Izili Danto on the feast of Our Lady of Mount Carmel, which is July 16th, Dambala on St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, and the spirits of the ancestor of All Saints Day and All Souls Day, which is November the 1st, as well as the 2nd. So, in essence, if you begin to take note of these dates, pay attention because those spirits are going to reign and come out. You remember I mentioned, if you've been following me, about the song about the freaks come out at night, the freaks come out at night, meaning that those that you don't know, like if you don't have that, if you haven't been in tune with how spirit act on certain dates and time, it will present itself out. This is what we get at. Many other familiar feasts for the sacred children, for the poor, for particular ancestors, as well as in initiations and funerary rituals occur throughout the year. So basically, you would gain information and insight about certain things. Like it will become apparent to you because this is exactly what that is. When someone has become curious about something and they want to know, the desires will be over a region or over a location, and it will present itself to you, is what we're getting at. So that's basically what that is. Say, for instance, if you've been wondering about somebody and you say, okay, this is a demon. I know this is what this is, whatever the case may be. You could simply light you a white candle, say a prayer, and ask God to present that demon to you and see when it manifests damn near down to the hour, minute. Okay, so we're going to go on this website. It says an introduction to the basic beliefs of the Voodoo religion. Voodoo is a monotheistic religion that is often misunderstood. Common in Haiti and New Orleans, Voodoo merges Catholic and African beliefs to form a unique set of rituals that include voodoo dolls and symbolic drawings. However, as with any religion, followers of voodoo cannot be lumped into a single category. So it's basically all in what you make it. You may be one that get, some thrill out of voodoo dolls, and that's your thing. Whereas you may have somebody who may do rituals and candle burning or incense burning or saging or whatever the case may be. There are also many misconceptions, which is just as important to understand. So it mentions that voodoo is known as Vodou, Voodoo, and by several other variants. I did go over that it is a syncretic religion that combines Roman Catholicism and Native African religion, particularly in the region of Dahomey and West Africa. It's also practiced in the Caribbean as well. So it says it began when African slaves brought their native traditions with them as they were forcefully transported to the New World. However, they were generally forbidden from practicing their religion. To get around these restrictions, the slaves started to equate their gods with Catholic saints. They also performed their rituals using the items and imagery of the Catholic Church. If a Voodoo practitioner considers himself Christian, he generally professed to be a Catholic Christian. Many Voodoo practitioners also consider themselves Catholics. Some see the saints and spirits to be one and the same. Others still hold that the Catholic accoutrements are primarily for appearance. So, I'm not going to go too much in depth in terms of the transatlantic slave trade because I do believe that is a snapshot in time. I do believe that um, blacks or Africans was on these lands prior to the slave trade, is what I believe. I believe that they had their own global trade agreement and global uh, exchange of goods and commerce as we do now. That's what I feel. And I think they was going back and forth, and I think um as a result, not to touch too much and dealt with that because it's a very sensitive subject, but something put in my being that blacks are already here, plain and simple. And a lot of things that were going on was throw off what was really truly going on under the scenes or behind the scenes. And I'm gonna leave it at that. Okay, so what are the misconceptions about voodoo? Popular culture has strongly associated voodoo with devil worship, torture, cannibalism, and malevolent magical workings. This is a largely product of Hollywood coupled with historical misrepresentation and misunderstandings of the faith. So I do believe that, as I mentioned when I did my podcast, and I think that's going to be a topic that I'm going to update Satanism. And when I did the research about the practice of Satanism and things of the sort, it's a taunting spirit. It's a contrast to what is popular belief. It's a mockery or imitation, if you will. And I think it's a reverse psychology um, way of seeing how individuals think, like how the mind thinks, what spirit am I dealing with, to determine whether I'm dealing with a good spirit or a bad spirit and personality, and you have empathy and care and concern and compassion. So, in essence, I'm saying that to say I brought that point up in my Satanism podcast as well as YouTube presentation. Now, I think voodoo is such as that to see how the person's mind thinks, and the demon will present itself to you and it reveal itself to you. So if you have somebody who's filled with demonic spirits, meaning the desire to, in essence, is to put forth the desires of the heart. If it's somebody that's looking to cause harm, injury, or danger towards you, by way of voodoo, God is going to present that demon to you. They will be in par. They can't change if they want to because it has been what? Presented in such a manner. Such as if you watch the TV screen and you may see where people are in a role, it works the same way in terms of spirit if you're dealing with somebody that is malevolent. So that's basically what it is. I'm going to show you what it is. Don't overthink it. And God would tag them in such a way to where you would gain the insight as to what that is. So, in other words, intent is showing intent is what it is. It says the seeds of these misconceptions began as much as earlier than anything seen in the movies. A well-known incident in 1791, a boy Common marked a crucial time in Haitian slave uprising. The exact details and intent are a matter of historical debate. So it mentions that it is believed that witnesses saw a voodoo ceremony and thought the participants were making some sort of pact with the devil to thwart their captors. Some people, even as recent as 2010, after the devastating earthquake, have claimed that this pact has perpetually cursed the Haitian people. In the voodoo influenced areas such as Haiti, slavery was extremely violent and brutal. The results of the slaves were equally as violent. All of this led white settlers to associate the religion with violence and also helped fuel many unfounded rumors and voodoo incense. So, in other words, it was to provide discernment to those who see on a higher scale and see on a higher level that what you are doing is to bring some type of clarity and understanding to you as to what you're doing. Um, I hate to do because it's a touchy subject, but it was empathy. It was empathy to let you know as what is we're doing as what was being done to us, as what you see is what you have dealt and done with. So oftentimes when we begin to see ourselves in others, particularly when it doesn't look favorable, we will begin to what? Get mad, get offended, feel shameful, feel embarrassed. So it's a mockery in your own right and in your beginnings and where you come from. It goes on. I'm gonna skip over rituals and practices. There is no standardized dharma within voodoo. Two temples within the same city might teach different mythologies and appeal to the Iwa in different ways. As such, the information provided in overviews of voodoo cannot always reflect the beliefs of all believers. For example, sometimes Iwa are associated with different families, Catholic saints, or Vebs. Some common variations are included here. So, animal sacrifice. A variety of animals might be killed during voodoo ritual. Depending upon the Iwa being addressed, it provides spiritual sustenance for the Iwa, while the flesh of the animal is then cooked and eaten by participants. So that's why I was just going to mention, um, the killing of the chickens and things of that nature. You know, when the spirit comes in and when they take and partake of the meal, they get nourishment and understanding as to what spirit came in and what is to be conveyed by the eating of this chicken. Vebs rituals commonly involve the drawing of certain symbols known as vebs with cornmeal and another powder. Each Iwa has its own symbol, and some have multiple symbols associated with them. So again, this right here is to make it apparent to you as to what the spirits are presenting to you and telling you about a time and a space. What occurred during that time and space. Voodoo dolls, the common perception of voodoo incense, poking pins into voodoo dolls, does not reflect traditional voodoo. However, voodoo practitioners do dedicate dolls to particular Iwa and use them to attract a Iwa's influence. I think the use of voodoo dolls is to give you inclination as to what direction it's coming from. What direction is coming from, who is doing it. So when you have these rituals, these different spirits are going to present themselves. And once you eat of the food, you will receive nourishment and higher sensibility and enlightenment as to what God is trying to convey to you. So it is a form of discernment. Okay. It can be used in a favorable as well as an unfavorable sense of the matter. Now we're going to proceed with the practice of hoodoo. Hoodoo is a spiritual practice, a set of spiritual practices, traditions, and beliefs which were created and concealed from slaveholders by enslaved Africans in North America. So basically, this is God's way of trying to cover it up, and those whose eyes has been conditioned to see, to understand what the spirits are saying without coming forthright and saying it, you would gain that insight as to what exactly that is. Okay. Um, Voodoo evolved from various traditional African religions and practices in the American South, incorporated various elements of indigenous botanical knowledge. Voodoo is a African diaspora tradition created during the time of slavery in the United States and is an esoteric system of African American occultism. Many of the practices are similar to other African traditions, which come from both Congo people in Central Africa. During the transatlantic slave trade, 40% of the Africans taken to the United States were Botu Congo. Bantu Congo. That's where 40% of the African slaves come from. Voodoo is a syncretic spiritual system that combines Christianity, Islam, brought over by enslaved West African Muslim, and spiritualism. This tradition is part of the African American cultural heritage of spirituality and religion following the Great Migration of African Americans. Hoodoo spread throughout the United States. Practitioners of hoodoo are called root workers, conjure doctors, conjure man or conjure woman, root doctors, hoodoo doctors, and swampers. Regional synonyms for hoodoo include conjure or root work. Uh, so we're going to go over practices. I'm not going to go over a lot of this because, as you know, it can be very, very extensive. Okay. Personal concerns in hoodoo. Personal concerns are used such as hair, nail clippings, blood, bone, and other bodily fluids are mixed with ingredients for either a positive or a negative effect. These items are placed inside a conjure bag or jars and mixed with roots, herbs, animal parts, and graveyard dirt for a murdered from a murdered victim's grave, and sometimes ground into a powder. The cursed items are buried under a person's steps to cause misfortune. To prevent from being fixed or cursed, it is considered a good idea to burn loose hairs, combed or fallen from the head, so a conjurer cannot make a cursing powder from a person's hair. Placing personal concerns in containers and burying them to cause harm was found in West African countries such as Nigeria and Benin. So in turn, I think a lot DNA and genetics are part of a lot of things that are being burned and things of the sort. So basically, the spirits in reading this is letting me know that this is to cover up your heritage, because once you have come into a new world, new way of doing things, they want that to be obliterated. Who is they? The spirits that may be. Because they're letting you know, because of these things and people not understanding it, they did these things to us because they simply didn't understand what was going on. They didn't understand what it is that what was going on. I think what happened is, um, and I'm going to step on a lot of people's shoes, but I'm sorry if I do. I think a lot of those individuals were being enslaved by their own people. And in turn, they begin to tell on them and report things that was occurring by way of spiritual, like if your eyes is conditioned to see it. And I think in essence, um, that's what helped perpetuate a lot of the slave trade. And then by way of, your other racial groups or whatever, pretty much did the same thing. So, I'm not gonna argue with anybody about that understanding, you know, to each his own. I mean, I think it's a snapshot in time. I think we are more as a people more off than that snapshot in time. Not to minimize it, I'm not at all. Um, but I honestly feel as though if you ask, you shall receive, and by providing uh food, water, rum, whiskey, to the riches. They're going to give you insight as to what occurred during a certain period of time. Because I think people, I think a lot of people um, lack understanding, true understanding as to what occurred during those times. And I think, in essence, if you don't want if you don't want things to go down in history, like in terms of history, no one wants to be inhumane in history. People don't want those things going down in the textbook. So because of that, I think God has a way of covering things up to where it's to the side, meaning something that is parallel to what this is. So as it mentioned about, mixing a lot of the trinkets and nail clippings and things that's personal with flour. Something lets me know that, during the time and the space, it was a lot of human trafficking, perhaps sex trafficking, as well as drug trafficking that occurred during that time. And to prevent them from speaking out and telling it, they did this to them to keep from people seeing what was truly going on behind the scenes. That's something that was revealed to me. You got many people that think that the slave trade and all of that did not occur, or it didn't occur as bad off as it being depicted. I don't know. I don't know. But in terms of as bad off, I do feel as though it did occur, but I don't feel as though all Black Americans or that are in these lands came here by way of slave ships. I don't believe that. At a point in time, that was what I was told, and I went with it. But as I've gotten older and gained insight, I no longer believe that. I think a lot of I hate to use the word a lot because that's not really a word. And I hate to say many because I can't really hypothesize. But I presume that some of the blacks that you see here are by way of different. I give you an example as to what I'm talking about. Um, the motherland, and over time, there was some mutation or a mixing of different ethnicities and groups, and then it began to disperse out different complexions and different looks. And I think what you see here now is by way of I don't want to use the word byproduct. That's a bad word to use, but blacks that come by way of like a changing of a look, like starting off a certain way, and then over time it began to change, and then it became one race, and then dominated and started back over to create the black race here as what we have here now. That's what I do feel. Many people may beg to differ, may say to the contrary, but that's just something that was revealed to me. It's very interesting information to know, to fathom, to understand. I don't feel as though many, and I'm going far left because I'm here speaking of voodoo as well as the practice of hoodoo. However, I cannot overlook the transatlantic slave trade because it all entails out of that. But I feel as though everybody that was here are here, like born and raised here on these lands, America, were descendants of slaves, partially by way of what I feel. And I think it's a state of mind. I don't want people to get upset, get mad. These are my opinions. So, the podcast is optional. I don't want to step on nobody's toes. I'm not saying that it didn't occur. It did occur. It did occur. And it's a very horrible situation that anybody can even fathom. I mean, there's no minimizing it, but do I feel as though it has been sensationalized? I do. I think we are far greater and far more than that snapshot of time. And I think in essence, it's just a lot of deception. Is what I feel. I think it's a lot of deception, and I think that as you see people in your own, person, even in your own household, uh, man against husband against wife, father against son, daughter against mother. I mean, so who's to say that didn't occur then, which perpetuated on a bigger scale? So it's just a very disheartening thing. But out of the out of the means of voodoo and hoodoo, it was a way of telling it without coming forth right and telling it what occurred, what they were doing, the horror that occurred. And I think God does have a way of protecting the dignity of such a people to where, um, to cover it up. And once the eyes has been conditioned to see it, you'll begin to see what occurred, who did it, and if you ask for why, he will give you that inclination as well. So that's my take and my synopsis on voodoo and hoodoo. You know, what they did, who did it, why they did it. Because if you take note of the clippers, the hair, the nails, personal garments, these things are often used in investigations or in terms of DNA. So this is basically what this is to cover up what was occurring. The spirits are making it apparent to you by way of it's a tactful way of telling you what was occurring. And once you have gained the insight and that knowledge, you become a threat. You become a threat. You ask for this knowledge. Okay, I've extended this knowledge to you. Some things you keep on the inside, and as I mentioned, you know, when I did my podcast about the Ark of the Covenant and what it revealed to me and what is it. I'm going to say it was the supreme being because, as I mentioned, it's one and the same. To be honest with you, and I mean God, the spirit, the spirit. Okay, so I am going to conclude this podcast as well as this YouTube presentation in regards to the religion of voodoo and practice of hoodoo. This podcast is not ploy to get anybody to um discriminate or judge individuals because of their culture, race, complexion, belief, sex, orientation, or identity, or whatever the case may be. I'm just giving my synopsis on it. Agree, disagree. Um, okay. So if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, you are welcome to comment below. Until then, you have a safe and wonderful day.